Hello everyone! I'm Lost, and Miyazaki himself, the God Emperor, has blessed us peasants today with a new Elden Ring patch. So, let's read through and discuss whether or not these changes are good or bad, and we will start with the PvP exclusive balance adjustments. Equipment. Increased poise damage of normal attacks for the following weapon types. Light great swords, that's fantastic. Backhand blades, don't know about that. Hand-to-hand arts, very much needed. And beast claws, yeah, that was very much needed as well. Beast claws are interesting because they attack as slow as an ultra, so they definitely need to do proper amounts of poise damage. The hand-to-hand arts were basically unusable in a lot of cases, so I'm happy to see that also getting a boost to poise. Backhand blades? Ooh, they were already really good, so I don't know about this, but we'll see. They might now become even more oppressive in PvP. For light greatswords, I just now got really good with light greatswords, and this buff, it's gonna be interesting to see. Because if you buff light greatswords enough, I think that might just become a new meta weapon. And I don't want it to be too strong. Still, I'm happy to see my favorite weapon class get a buff. Now, they also increased poise damage on dual wield attacks for the following weapon types. Straight swords, thrusting swords, curved swords, katanas, spears, whips, fists and claws. I don't know if straight swords, curved swords, katanas and spears needed a buff, but I could definitely see thrusting swords needing a buff. And whips. Fists and claws, I'm a little bit undecided. You can do so much damage with fists and claws, especially the running heavy attacks. They also increased the poise damage of the Claws of Night throwing attacks, and I have to say, I have been on the receiving end of plenty of Claws of Nights, and I know just how oppressive these things can be. Granted, it's not really the poise damage that is the main issue. When I am fighting these things, they happen to headshot me a lot, and because of that, I then get staggered. So, they get a nice follow-up attack, and if you're in an invasion, that is a terrible thing. Not sure if the increased poise damage will actually do anything now that I think of it. That's not really the issue. At any rate, they also decreased the backstep invulnerability window when the Fine Crucible Feather Talisman or the Talisman of all the Crucibles are equipped. I don't know if I like this. I did try out the Fine Crucible Feather Talisman in the arena a little bit, and I did fight a fair amount of people that used it to great effect. I love this talisman because it gives us a different way of playing the game. If they decreased the backstep invulnerability window, then I also want them to decrease the amount of damage you take. Maybe it was too good, I don't know. But I still want this to be good. I really do. Moving on, we get to skills. And here we have the Savage Lion Claw. The second hit of the follow-up attack is now easier to land. They also decreased the damage animation of the first attack against other players, which means that the hitbox doesn't last as long now, I'm assuming. They also decreased the invulnerability window against other players' attacks on the Raging Beast and Blind Spot Ashes of War. Blind Spot, an incredibly damaging and oppressive Ash of War, and fighting against that is really hard. Now that they don't have as many invincibility frames, maybe there is more trading to be done. We'll have to see. They also decreased the poise amount generated when charging the Palm Blast skill, which I think is sad. I know it was probably a glitch or a mistake that Palm Blast had an infinite amount of poise, but I kinda like that. It was a high risk, high reward type of situation, so I wouldn't have changed it. Now we have spells and incantations. First up, Miriam's Vanishing, and they decrease the invulnerability window against other players' attacks. I'll be honest and say that I didn't use this as much. I tried it in Invasions. It wasn't as successful, but in duels, in the arena, this was really good, due to the fact that it breaks lock-on, and it might still be really good if you use it correctly. We'll see. They also increased the attack power of the initial lightning spear in the knight's lightning spear, and they decreased the attack power of the spears launched after the first one. This thing is super deadly, and I kinda like this change because the initial lightning spear is rather easy to dodge. It's the follow-ups that did so much damage to you, so I think this is a nice little change. They also decreased the poise damage of all spears generated by the spell, so maybe you won't get staggered as much now? I don't think that really matters too much, but you know what, we'll see. Then we move on to some general balance adjustments, and we have increased damage animation of the light greatsword's charge against normal enemies, not players, which is fine. They also increased the stats for some of the summons, and we'll just really skip this, because who cares about the exact damage you can get out of summons? Moving on, we are talking about armaments, and this is not PvP, this is the entire game. I think this applies to both PvP and PvE. So they increased the attack power, scaling when upgrading the following armaments. Repeating crossbow, yeah, that needed some buffs. Spread crossbow. Damage-wise, I don't know if it needed any buffs. It's really the bleed build-up and the sleep build-up that's a problem here. And Rabbit's Cannon. I like that gets a bit of a buff. Again though, this isn't really about the damage for this thing, it's more about being able to knock people off ledges. Then we have the Shield of Night. The Shield of Night is a really fascinating shield because the whole gimmick of this thing is that you need to block attacks and then use guard counter to shoot a projectile back at your opponents. And so they increase the damage negation when blocking physical skills, which I suppose is good. Any buff to this shield is good, but what I'm worried about is not the actual damage negation as much as it's the stamina consumption, so it needs more guard boost. They also buffed the Euphoria. They increase the holy damage when the weapon has its luster restored, they decrease the number of attacks required to restore the weapon's luster, and they increase the duration of the luster restoration effects. That's good, because the Euphoria is something that never got used in my estimation, in my experience. It has a really fascinating Ash of War, but it takes too much time to really build up the charge needed, so it's just another twin blade, which is sad. The Golden Lion Shield got its increased guard strength. That's what I wanted them to do with the Shield of Night. The Golden Lion Shield is the shield you get from Freya, and its Ash of War is a shield bash, but with a area effect thing happening in front of it. It was a fun shield to use, and with the increased guard strength, I think it would be even better. I think it really should have a lot more guard boost. I don't know what it is now, I'll go in and check afterwards. Golem Fist. Added a damage hitbox to the hand portion of the ranged fist attack. These things are just garbage. I hate them. So, any buffs? Great. The Smith Script Great Hammer. Increased poise damage of the swing portion of the throwing attacks. The projectile is unchanged. Great Hammer. Were there really people who poised through the swing? I don't know. I didn't do it. But then again, I never really fought anybody while wearing big boy armor. Ooh, look at this. Spread crossbow. Decrease the generated status buildup when used with bolts that have status effects. Huh. That is a good change. They really needed to do that. I'm still curious on how good this is, because it still might be really good, but we'll have to test. The Ailment Talisman. After the onset of a status ailment, the status build-up or duration of said ailment will now also be reduced immediately by a certain amount. You know what? Anything that can guard against status ailments is great in my book. And then the clarifying horn charm has gotten a buff to its focus resistance. Fantastic. Moving on, we now go to skills. So, the Savage Lion Claw increased attack power and poise damage of the first attack. I mean, sure. Swift Slash. Oh, okay. Let's see. Reduced movement distance when using this skill. And they extended the recovery time. They realized that Swift Slash didn't get enough nerfs. So now, this thing might, maybe, potentially, I fear to say it out loud, be balanced? At any rate, I won't be getting too many Swift Slash ganks from now on, I think. Then we have the overhead stance, that's for the Great Katana, and they increase the attack power against enemies, but not players. Which is great, I love that Ash of War, I think it's really cool. The aspect of the Crucible Wings got a buff as well. They increased the attack power and they increased directional control, as well as the amount of poise generated when using this skill. And then we have Lightspeed Slash. The additional light attacks are now affected by the attack power and ability scaling of the weapon. Lightspeed Slash. That is probably one of the Red Dawn weapons. Yeah, it's the bad one, where he jumps up into the air and then comes crashing down, and then beams of light try to hurt you as well. I don't know if this buff is going to be enough to make this weapon good, but it's a start. Rancor Slash. Increase the attack power of the Vengeful Spirits, and they increase the stamina damage against guarding enemies. Rancor Slash is interesting because I really wanted to make a Necromancer build, and so I tried Rancor Slash and I found the Ash of War to be really bad. I'm sorry, I didn't like it at all. So it just went to the wayside, went into the dustbin where all of my failed builds have gone. The Revenger's Blade. Increased directional control for the follow-up attacks after a strong attack. Increased directional control. What is the Revenger's Blade? What is that? Is that the Fox Ash of War? Let's see. Yeah, that's the Fox Ash of War. And they did increase the directional control for the follow-up attacks. I don't think that was necessary. The Revenger's Blades, or the Fox, is already really damn good. In fact, it has the potential of one-shotting a ton of enemies, so not necessary. But, hey. Horn Calling, increased attack power against enemies, but not players. And Horn Calling Storm, increased attack power against enemies, not players. Sure, fine, whatever. Next up is the Weed Cutter. This is the Rakshasa's weapon art. It is Rivers of Blood 2.0, as a lot of people have called it, and it has increased the speed of its attacks. That might be very good, depending on if it now true combos or not. Regardless, the timing has changed, so we can take advantage of that in our PvP matches. Next up is Romina's Purification. Increased poise value when using this skill. Romina's Purification. That must be the skill where you jump up into the air with the pole blade and go swoosh swoosh. I love that, honestly. And so getting a poise increase is great. Red Bear Hunt. It was not great. I haven't seen a lot of people use Red Bear Hunt, and if you don't know what that is the Ash of War where the Red Bear goes 1 hit, 2 hit. It increased the attack power and increased the poise value when using this skill. Exactly what this thing really needed. How much they increased it? Well, we'll see, but I'm happy that thing got a buff. Rancor Shot has decreased status build-up generation when we use with arrows that have status effects. Rancor Shot, I believe, might be the... I don't know what this is. Does it create like a spooky head after you shoot? Or is this the bow that has homing abilities? don't know. Don't particularly care. I don't think it's going to be super noticeable. Repeating fire. That's for the machine gun crossbow. Adjusted attack power to compensate for the increase in weapon damage, which is nice. Alright, cool. They also have Feeble Lord's Frenzied Flame. Reduced Frenzy status effect build-up against enemies. Isn't that the big head that shows up and then does very little... Okay, I don't know if this is the right spell, if this is the spell I think it is. This is not great. I don't know about that. Revenge of the Night. Increased poise damage and attack power when this skill is used immediately after guarding against an enemy attack. So this is the Shield of Night, and it has increased poise damage and attack power. That's good. How much attack power, we don't know, but this shield really needed a buff if it was going to be used at all. Again, I think what it definitely needs is more God boost. Oh, and they did. Here comes my favorite one. Spells. Let's see, how many spells got a buff, shall we? Glintblade Trio, increased attack power. Fantastic. Blades of Stone. Adjusted the attack power of the first, second, and third charge attacks. Increased the attack power of non-charge attack. Increased attack power of the first hit of the charge attack and reduced the attack power of the second and third hits. Increased range and attack speed. So I think this is generally a buff. But I'm happy that they at least reduced the attack power of the second and third hits. Glintstone Nail, increased attack power and improved tracking. Same with its brother, Glintstone Nails. Here we go, Impenetrable Thorns. All generated Impenetrable Thorns will now track enemies. That's a buff. Jesus. Decreased attack power and poise damage. Oh, here we go. Yeah. Decreased the hemorrhage status buildup and stamina damage against guarding enemies. Okay. Breathe, Lost. Breathe. This is good. We're in a good place right now. Next up, Rings of Spectral Light. Increased attack power and frostbite status buildup. Increased the attack power, good. And frostbite status buildup, also good. I've used this to great effect, but I still think it was a little underpowered, so I appreciate that. Vortex of Putrescence. Increased attack power and frostbite status buildup. Cool. Next up are the incantations. And the Minor Earth Tree got an increase in the HP recovery amount. Then we have Land of Shadow. That is just... It's not exactly the Elden Stars, but it's kind of like Elden Stars. And it has improved enemy tracking. That's always bad for PvP. Spira, increased attack speed. I tried to get a kill with this a little while ago, and oh my god, it was painful. It was terrible even. So, yeah, it needed increased attack speed. Watchful Spirit, that's when you summon a skeleton head above your head, and it will just shoot out little balls of spirit energy, I suppose. And they now have improved enemy tracking, which is good. That's very good. We have Divine Beast Tornado that has increased attack power now, and enemies hit by the tornado will now be launched upwards, which is cool. That is good. I like that. GG for you guys. The tornado will be less likely to disappear due to collision with the terrain, which is also fantastic, because if you try to use this incantation uphill, well, you wouldn't. Let's just say it wouldn't happen. Rain of Fire, okay, everybody knows how bad this is. Rain of Fire, increased attack power, and reduced the interval between each hit. So they hopefully gave it a lot of extra fire. Isn't Rain of Fire a spell, though? Rain of Fire. No, it's an incantation. My bad. Roar of Rugula. Increased poise damage and attack power. Yeah, I can see it. It was basically a worse Wrath of Gold. And now with the increased poise damage, maybe you'll stagger people to the point where they get stuck there a little bit. The Furious Blade of Ansbach increased attack power, and they also fixed a ton of bugs. We'll get to it, but they fixed a ton of bugs with this. It now also does bleed. Rotten Butterflies has increased Scarlet Rot status build-up, they reduced the interval between damage ticks, and they increased the range. I've heard from the grapevine that it got a big buff. I heard it was a big buff, so I'm really looking forward to trying that out. Then we have a ton of Ashes, Wandering Noble, Noble Sorceress, and they all got the same buff. Will no longer stagger as easily. And then, look, if you really are interested in this, then you might want to play a different game. I'm sorry, I don't know who would be super interested in how good these Ashes are. Here we go. Bug fixes. I'm not going to read through all of these, but there has been a ton of bug fixes. There have been several things like Ansbach's Furious Advance and his coat. It was supposed to boost his... Ansbach's coat was supposed to boost his incantations and stuff like that. The Miklas Circlet that you get after defeating the last boss were supposed to boost Miklas Divine Light. It didn't, but it now does. I also saw that they fixed the physical attack attribute menu display of the Warpick weapon. This have been just broken for so long. I don't know why they finally fixed it here. Look at all of these. Look at all of these. Yeah. For example, fix the bug with a different rage arch sometimes perform when following up a strong attack after using the Raging Beast and Dynastic Sick play skills. I'm not going to read through all of these. They wrote down here somewhere that they fixed certain Ashes of War that wasn't behaving as expected, and that could mean basically anything. So hopefully it's not broken now. I still wonder though whether or not Ansbach's bow still get to do all the damage when it hits you with its Ash of War. Well, that's it, ladies and gentlemen, for this patch. Ooh, that was a lot. I've been reading for 22 minutes. What are my final thoughts on this? Well, I'm a little skeptical to certain of the changes that has been made, but all of the bug fixes was very necessary. The big shakeup would be the poise damage that you can now do with light greatswords and the backhand blades and the hand-to-hand arch. These things now are going to be a very interesting weapon class to try out, and that's what I'm going to do. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later. Kisses.